Part 2, Islam, Chapter 7, The False Gods. Brothers in Islam, come, let us now try to establish the minimum conditions you should fulfill and the least you should do so that you can be called Muslims. What is Kufur and what is Islam? You must first of all recollect one important thing. What is Kufur and what is Islam? Kufur means refusal to obey God, and Islam means total submission to God alone and refusal to accept any ideas, laws, or commandments which contravene the guidance received from God. This contrast between Islam and Kufur has been clearly described in the Quran. Allah says, "Whoso judges not by what God has sent down, they are the unbelievers." Al-Ma'idah, ayat 44. Judging does not refer here to merely legal matters or court judgment. It applies to all those decisions which we all have to make every day in our lives. You are all the time having to ask ourselves whether to do a certain thing or not, and how to act in varying circumstances. One way to reach a decision in every eventuality has been laid down in the Book of God and in the Sunnah of His Messenger. Other ways are prompted by your desires, by your cultures and society, or by man-made law. If you ignore or reject the way laid down by God, if you decide to conduct your lives according to some other way, you are then following the path of Kufur. If you do this always and in every portion of your lives, you are totally kafir. And if you obey the direction of God in some matters, while in others follow your own desire, your own self, and society or man-made laws, then you are guilty of kufur to the extent of your disobedience. You may be half kafir, or a quarter kafir, or less or more. Put simply, kufur exists in proportion to the extent of rebellion against the law of God. Islam, total surrender. Islam is nothing but man's exclusive and total submission to God. The accent is on total. He is not a servant of himself, or of his ancestors, or of his family and nation, or of any ruler, general, leader, mullah, sheikh, or any other person. He is a servant of God alone, says Allah. Say, O Prophet, people of the book, come to the creed common between us and you, that we serve none but God, and that we associate none with Him, and none of us take others as Lord apart from God. But if they turn away, say, bear witness that we are Muslim. Surah Al-Imran, ayat 64. And further, he says, what? Do they seek a deen other than God? Whereas unto Him surrenders whoso is in the heaven and on earth, willingly or unwillingly, and unto Him all must return. Surah Ali Imran, ayat 83. One fundamental principle has been clearly and forcefully propounded here. True religion means total obedience and submission to God. Worshipping God does not mean merely that you bow before Him 5 times a day. It means that His commandment should be carried out at all times. You should abstain from what He has forbidden and do what He has commanded. In every particular, find out what the commandment of God is. Never judge the right and wrong by what your own hearts desire, what your intellect suggests, what your forefathers used to do, what your families and relations prefer, or what your society approve. what religious scholars tell you, what particular person orders or will be pleased by. If you follow any other person's order or suggestion in preference to God's commandment, you are making that person a partner in Godhood. It will mean you are giving him that status which exclusively belongs to God. Authority to lay down what is right and what is wrong belongs to God alone. Surah Al-An'am, Ayat 57. Worthy of worship is He alone, who has created you and who keeps you alive. Everything in the heavens and on earth obeys Him. No stone obeys another stone. No trees obeys another tree. No animal obeys another animal. Are you then worse than animals, trees, and stone, which obey only God, that you obey human beings like yourself in preference to God? This is the central message of the Quran, simple and emphatic. 3 reasons for going astray. Why do people disobey God and go astray? According to the Quran, there are 3 main reasons. Self-worship. The first is love of one's own desires. And who is more astray than he who follows his own likes and dislikes without any guidance from God? Surely God guides not the wrongdoers. Surah Al-Qasas, Ayat 50. Thus, more than anything, it is man's own wishes and desires which lead him astray. For the one who becomes a slave to his own desires can never become a true slave of God. He will always have only one consideration before him: what will bring him more worldly profit, what will bring him fame and honor, what will give him pleasure and gratification, and what will provide him with comfort and ease. He will therefore do whatever is necessary to achieve his ends, irrespective of whether God has forbidden the kind of things he is doing. And he will never do anything which will not help achieve these ends, even though God may have ordered him to do so. The God of such a person is his own self, nafs, or his own desire, his likes and dislikes, his hawa, and not Allah. How then can he benefit from God's guidance, asks the Quran. Have you seen him who makes his own desire his God? Will you be a guardian over them? Or do you think that most of them hear or use their reason? Nay, they are but as the cattle. Nay, but they are further astray from the way. Al-Furqan, Surah Al-Furqan, Ayat 43 and Ayat 44. To be a slave of one's desire is worse than being a beast of the field. No animal will overstep the limits set by God. Every animal eats what has been fixed by God for it. It performs only those functions which are allotted to it. But such an animal is man, that when he allows his desire to take over, he commits acts as would Satan himself shudder. Society and culture. The second reason for going astray is following blindly the customs and practices, beliefs and notions, rites and ceremonies of society, and regarding them as superior to God's guidance. Such a person, when reminded of God's commandment, insists that he should follow only what society approves and continue the tradition of his family or country. How can one who is suffering from such a disease be a servant of God? His gods are society, family, and nation. What right has he to claim that he is a Muslim? The Quran warns him thus. And when he said to them, follow what God has sent down, they say, no, we'll follow only what we found our forefathers doing. What? Even if their fathers did not use their reason at all, nor were they guided? Al-Baqarah, Ayat 170. And further, and when it was said to them, come now unto what God has sent down, and unto the messenger, they say, enough for us, is what we found our fathers doing. What? Even if your fathers had no knowledge and no guidance? O believers, you are responsible for your own souls. Those who are astray can do you no harm. If you are rightly guided, unto God shall you all return, and then He will tell you what you are doing. Al-Ma'idah, ayat 104 to 105. In every age, the people who refuse to follow the truth have been suffering from this disease. Always, it has prevented them from accepting the guidance brought by the messengers of God. When Musa invited people to submit to God's law, they said, "Have you come to us to turn us from what we found our fathers practicing?" Surah Yunus, ayat 79. When Ibrahim tried to dissuade his fellow citizens from associating gods with God, they said, "We found our fathers worshipping them." Surah Al-Anbiya, ayat 53. People have, in all ages, made this same excuse to every prophet. What you say is contrary to the practice of our forefathers, and this is why we cannot accept it. And even so, we never send a warner before you to any people, but it's men who live in the pursuit of pleasure said, "We indeed found our fathers following a certain way, and it is their footsteps that we are following." He said, "What? Though I should bring you a better guidance than you found your fathers upon?" They said, "In what you are sent with, we disbelieve." So we inflicted our retribution upon them, and behold, how was the end of them that gave the lie to the truth. Surah Al-Zukhruf, ayat 23 to 25. Allah tells people that they can either follow their forefathers, their society and cultures, or His commandments. They cannot do both. If you want to be Muslim, you must give up all things apart from God and obey what He has commanded. And when He said to them, "Follow what God has sent down," they said, "No, but we will follow what we found our fathers doing." What? Even though Satan was inviting them onto the punishment of the blazing flame? And whomsoever submits his will to God and is a doer of good, he indeed has taken hold of the most firm handle. And with God rests the outcome of all affairs. And whoso disbelieve, let not his belief grieve him. Unto us they shall return, and we shall tell them what they did. Surah Luqman, ayat 21 to ayat 23. Obedience to human beings. The third reason is obeying other human beings in preference to God. How does this happen? When we mistakenly believe that the person concerned is a great thinker whose word must be true, when we imagine that he controls our livelihood, having the power to withhold it from us or to give us whatever he desires, when we think that he has the authority over us to do as he wishes, or when we subscribe to the notion that he can ruin us by laying his curse upon us or take us to paradise with him if he is obeyed, or when we conclude that we must follow the ways of certain nations because they are progressive and modern and have made great advances in the world. If we behave in any of these manners, the door of divine guidance is closed. If you obey most of those on earth, they will lead you astray from the path of God. Surah Al-An'am, ayat 116. We can be on the right path only when we have faith in one God and follow His guidance only. How can we find that path when we have invented numerous gods, sometimes obeying this one and sometimes that one? The three main causes of going astray are now before you: self-worship, or unrestrained gratification of one's desires; social conformity, or blind following of the custom of society, family and nations; and servitude to human beings in general, especially rulers of the time, rich and false religious thinkers. If you want to become true Muslim, you must first break these three formidable idols who claim to be your gods. For with these three idols in your heart, you cannot become slave of God. Merely by offering prayers many times a day, by ostentatiously observing fasts, and by putting on the outward face of Muslim, you may deceive your fellow beings, as well indeed yourself, but you will never be able to deceive God. Conditions of Muslims today. To be slave of the three idols, I say, is a real shirk. You may have demolished the temples of bricks and mortars. You may have broken stone idols in them, but you have paid little attention to the temples within your own hearts. To smash these idols is the essential precondition to becoming a Muslim. This applies to all Muslims throughout the world. Whatever sufferings you are going through, I'm sure are the results of worshipping these idols. But because I'm facing my Punjabi brothers here, I particularly tell them that the root of all their misery and humiliation is again precisely these three things. There are more than 50 million of us in this land, but despite this, we have no weight of our own. Some communities, numerically far smaller, carry more weight. And what is the reason? It is solely by being slave to our own self, to family custom, and to other human beings in preference to God, that our strength has been sapped from within. Let us look at ourselves. We have created among us many castes, like Rajputs, Gurkhas, Mughal, Jats, and many others. Islam asks all these ethnic groups to become one ummah, to be brothers, and to unite harmoniously like a solidly built wall of cemented bricks. But we are all clinging to the old pagan's ideas. Just as there are separate castes among Hindus, so are we also split. We do not intermarry as Muslims should. There is no trace of brotherhood and fraternity between us. Verbally, we call each other Muslim brothers, but in reality, we observe all these distinctions which were prevalent before Islam. It is this distinction which has prevented us from becoming a strong wall. Each and every brick in the wall is disjointed. We can neither rise together nor face any adverse situation together. We are asked, in accordance with Islamic teaching, to break these barriers and become one again. What is our answer? Just the same as the opponents of all the prophets gave. We cannot go against a custom which has come down from our forefathers. And what answer was given to God to this obduracy? Only this: you do not have to break this custom, and you do not have to give up the following the rites of Hindus, but we shall break you into pieces and shall put you to disgrace and dishonor in spite of your large numbers. Look further. Allah has commanded that your sons and daughters are both entitled to inheritance. What is your answer? No, for according to the custom of our forefathers, only sons and not daughters are entitled. We'll follow the way our forefathers in preference to the law of God. Tell me, in the name of God, is this Islam? When you ask to break this ancestral custom, you say that you'll break it only when others too break it. When asked why, you say because if others did not give a share to their daughters and we did, then we should be at a disadvantage when our son took wives. Just consider what this reply means. Are we to obey this law of God only on condition that others obey first? We shall be saying next, if others commit adultery, we shall also do it. If others commit theft, we shall also steal. In short, this such time as others give up sinning, we shall continue to commit sins. In following your caste system and inheritance custom, in such a manner, all the three false idols we have been discussing are being worshipped. There is slavery to the self, to society, and to kafir nations. And at the same time, while serving all these idols, we still claim that we nonetheless somehow belong to Islam. These are only two examples. We need only look at the situation with open eyes to see countless others. And in all this, we will find that sometimes there is worship of one idol, sometimes of two, and sometimes of three. While these idols are being worshipped alongside the claims of allegiance to Islam and God, how can we expect Allah to shower His blessing on us? Blessing which has been made promise only to true Muslims. Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim.